Let's see how good you are at your song lyrics. Pop culture. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to help each other get through this little thing called life. Are you all too old? I didn't think so. Prince, you might remember that song from years ago, one of his most popular songs by the artist known as Prince. You may also know that he passed away a couple weeks ago. This song is the opening track to his movie called Purple Rain, which was a phenomenal hit back in, the 80s or something, and one of Prince's most popular songs. What you might not know, according to music scholars, and I quote, "Common to much of Prince's writing, this song is thought to be an exhortation to follow Christian ethics, with the D elevator of the lyrics being a metaphor for the devil." Didn't know that. Didn't know also that he was one of the top philanthropists among musical artists that ever lived. But we know that even a person who sings Christian songs, sings about Christian ethics, has problems and setbacks, and at too young of age, of 57, he died. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to help each other through this little thing called life. In an age of extremely cantankerous politics, teetering on civil unrest, renewed nuclear armaments and threats, refugees fleeing from many places in the world, borders blocked, global economic stagnation, war on many fronts, gun violence in our culture out of control, a suicide rate that's alarmingly soaring, and terrorism accomplishing what it sets out to do, terrorize, we gather as church as a countercultural movement. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to help each other get through this little thing called life. In our reading from the book of Acts, which is a long story, but it's great when you get several pieces of the story together rather than breaking them up, we hear the story of a conversion of a woman whose name might be Lydia. She would become the first Christian convert in Europe. She's currently living in a city called Philippi, which was a leading city of the district of Macedonia, a northern Roman colony. In other words, it was settled by troops that were loyal to the Caesars and given land and property in this area. So it's sort of the VFW gathering, if you will, in that part of the world. If you look at a map, Philippi is a port city in the northern part of the Aegean Sea in Macedonia. Philippi was a cosmopolitan city. It was a city of trade. You probably noticed that Lydia is not from there. In fact, we should have just stopped and applauded Marianne for being able to pronounce all those city places and regions. She came from the south, from today what we would call modern-day Turkey, Thyatira. It was a Greek-influenced Asian city, also a Roman colony for about 150 years. Thyatira's urban area, but it was known for its one particular trade item, which was the production of purple garments. Purple dye industry was there. And the region is called Lydia. So perhaps the woman that we have in our story isn't known as Lydia. Maybe it's Jim the Italian, or you're from Denver? Yeah. Rick, we just call him Denver. Yeah. The Ohioan. You know, not given so much a name as the foreigner, somebody from somewhere else, identified as not belonging from here or not being from here, but just named as their place name. She, along with a group of women, are outside the city gate of Philippi. Outside the gate ought to tell us something. They're near a river in a place that was fairly well known for being a place of prayer. It tells us they were God-fearers, which is basically coded language for people who understood the God of Israel and were beginning to conform their life to the laws of Israel, although many hadn't converted, were still considered Gentiles. Since there wasn't apparently a synagogue in Philippi, they were outside. Remember, this is the VFW of all things Roman. So maybe there wasn't a synagogue in the town. Or maybe there was. and they weren't welcome at it. For whatever reason, all we know is that they are on the outskirts of town, out there for prayer. Either way, it's probably a plan B or a plan C in the life of faith for these women, and Lydia is their leader. Now, Paul had a vision to come into this area. He was prevented where he was supposed to go, where he wanted to go, where he was planning to go. He was prevented in the vision to not go there. There were blocks. He goes to the city. He meets, converts, and baptizes and founds the first church in Lydia's household. Sounds great, except for this is also Paul's plan B or plan C in his life as well. Are you seeing a pattern? Events turn even more dicey. For these missionaries meet up with a palm reader, a medium, begins following them along. Not invited to, she just starts following them around day and night, pronouncing that they are followers of the Most High God, which sounds like a great compliment. You know, that'd be awesome. Let's walk into City Hall and have somebody follow. Here comes the follower of the Most High God. Except after 3 days, it says it got kind of annoying. They don't confront the Spirit until Paul gets annoyed, which is one of the mysteries of the text that I can't wait to ask Jesus about in the afterlife because I don't get it. They confront the Spirit and cast it out, which sounds like a great liberation story, and it should be resulting in general rejoicing all around, except for the fact that Jesus just messed up somebody's economics. Her handlers, her pimps, her owners were exploiting her gifts and making an income off of it. And when they find that she's now worthless, they sue Paul and Silas. She's worthless to them, and there's not much worse an outcome for a slave than to become worthless to their master. Certainly, it cannot end well for her, and she disappears from the text. It doesn't go very well for Paul and Silas either. Apparently, Paul has committed a high offense, meaning he's messed with somebody's economy. Never mess with somebody's money. A white-collar crime. He's thrown in the slammer and beaten with sticks. Now, there's a lot of problems with this. Of course, nobody likes to go to prison, and nobody likes to be beaten by people who are in charge. No one likes to be followed around and publicly identified in an obnoxious way by anyone, least of all a person who's possessed. And when you're trying to make friends and influence people in a culture, you want to find a nice synagogue, this is Paul's strategy, that's packed with very wealthy male elders who will listen to your pitch and convert. That was Paul's strategy. But Paul has found a small group of women out by a river beyond the gate of the city. Plan C, Plan D, Plan E, going down the drain. Dearly beloved, we're gathered here today to help each other get through this little thing called life. Maybe your health isn't so great. Maybe you have cancer. Maybe somebody that you love does. Maybe your grief is formidable and unrelenting. Maybe you've lost a job. Maybe you've lost hope. Maybe you seem a little adrift in your life, unsure where you'll go. Maybe you're distrusting yourself now, not trusting your faith or your God to see you through, and you are in good company. You're in good company with Paul and Silas in prison, with Lydia helpless and in prayer at home. You're in good company with a whole host of biblical characters who were doing their best, but it just wasn't going their way because of missteps or mistakes and mishaps or circumstances that were beyond their control. Pick any one of those. Let's lionize some of them. Abraham and Sarah had fertility problems. King Saul was a narcissist. David had a lust problem. Solomon had a faithfulness problem. Jacob had a jealousy problem. Esau had a family problem. Joseph had an ego problem. Moses was a stutterer and a murderer. Aaron was a spineless leader. Ezekiel runs in fear. The prophets were ignored, oppressed, and murdered. Israel was led into exile for generations, a nation defeated. Hosea, for his faithfulness, was cheated upon. Daniel, for his faithfulness, was thrown into a lion's den. His friends, for their faithfulness, were thrown into a fiery furnace. And these are the good guys. Dearly beloved, we're gathered here today to help each other get through this little thing called life. So, Lydia prays. Paul and Silas worship and praise. Paul and Silas save a life this night after they've been falsely imprisoned and beaten with sticks. They save the life of the person who's holding them, showing mercy. Paul will hold accountable the magistrates who break their own laws by punishing him. What law did they break? He's a Roman citizen and cannot be punished without proper hearing. He insists on justice. They try to be faithful the best they can to the words of Jesus to remain in his peace. You know Jesus' words, peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not let them be afraid. Dearly beloved, we gathered here together today to help each other through this little thing called life. They try to be faithful as best they can to remember the promise in the book that John wrote, the book of Revelation, that even though their lives are not doing well, and that some are being persecuted, and for some other more terrifying and terrible things are happening, they know that God is working out God's justice, and God, not the magistrates, will have the final word. That, as John saw in his vision according to the book of Revelation, the nations will eventually walk by God's light, and the kings of the earth, the rulers of the earth, the presidents and the CEOs, the people in charge, all the people will bring into God's kingdom the glory and honor of the nations. It's unimaginable today. In the song, Let's Go Crazy, which is the lyrics that I'm quoting from, it goes like this. So when you call up that shrink in Beverly Hills, you know the one, Dr. Everything will be all right, Dr. Everything will be all right, will make everything go wrong. Pills and thrills and daffodils, he's looking for rhymes, will kill. Hang tough, children. He's coming. He's coming. Coming. Take me away. Did you know that he had explicit lyrics like that? Maranatha. Come, Lord Jesus. Did you know that Prince wasn't perfect? You probably did. Did you know that he had problems? You probably did. Did you know that he had setbacks? You probably did. Did you know that he had an amazing record of philanthropy? You probably did not. Did you know that Prince was deeply Christian and deeply troubled? You, as Christians, are not called to be perfect every time. Christians are simply called to keep plugging away, to never give up. What if Paul had given up in the face of adversity or hardship or the threat of death on his life? Look at how the ancestors of faith did it. They prayed. In difficulty, they worshiped and praised God. They provided mercy. They were striving for justice in the world. They returned back to their supportive community. We didn't get this in the end of the Acts reading, but it's there. They returned back to the house church, now in Lydia's church. They returned back to Christians' community every time. They are faithful to God's call as best they can and trusted God's plan to make it all work out in life and in death, in good times and in bad times, because God had covered them and his peace was promised and his peace sustained them. In light of God's promise and call to us, how concerned can we be with the momentary setbacks that we face? How quick should we be to compromise to the voice of the devil, the de-elevator, according to that song, the world or the sinful self who knows only to condemn us. Let's listen to the God of hope who guarantees us his lasting presence in peace and his lasting victory. Dearly beloved, we're gathered here to help each other get through this little thing called life. Amen.